Welcome back to the deep dive. And, as we're talking about this idea of surrendering to Allah's will, finding that alignment with his plan,
hmm
I keep thinking about how tough that must be, like in practice.
Yeah.
I mean, we're constantly bombarded with messages
Mhm.
about, you know, achieving our dreams, pursuing our passions, getting what we want.
Yeah.
It almost feels like our whole society is built around this idea of individual ambition, striving for more.
Yeah, you're right there. The challenge is how do we reconcile that desire for control and fulfillment with the understanding that, true peace comes from aligning ourselves with something bigger.
Right. And the teacher actually introduces this concept of Nafs. I've heard
Nafs.
this term before, but I'd love to get your take on it. What exactly is Nafs?
Yeah. So nafs is often translated as self or ego,
Okay.
but it's really more than that.
Yeah.
It's that part of us that's driven by those primal instincts,
Hmm.
our desires, our emotions. It's that voice in our head that's always seeking pleasure, avoiding pain,
Hmm.
craving more. Oh, so it's like the little devil on our shoulder saying, get that promotion, buy that fancy car, eat that dessert.
Yeah.
Even if those things don't really lead to like lasting happiness or spiritual
That
fulfillment.
Nafs can be really powerful,
Yeah.
and it can distract us from spiritual growth.
Okay, so our desires aren't bad,
Not inherently, no.
but when they're in control, when we become slaves to our ego,
Mm-hmm.
we lose sight of what really matters.
You got it.
It makes me think about instant gratification versus delayed gratification.
Oh, yeah.
Right? We live in a world that's so obsessed with getting what we want right now.
Fully.
But the teacher seems to be suggesting that true contentment comes from, resisting those impulses and aligning ourselves with a deeper purpose.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The Nafs can be a major obstacle to submitting to Allah's will.
Okay.
It's always pulling us toward that immediate gratification,
Right.
fulfilling those desires that are often fleeting and, ultimately unsatisfying.
So if our nafs is this powerful force constantly tempting us with these worldly desires, how do we manage it?
Right.
How do we quiet that voice and become more open to spiritual guidance?
Well, it's not about, eradicating desires or becoming emotionless.
Right.
It's about recognizing the nafs
Mhm.
and learning to manage it.
Okay.
The teachers suggest several practices that can help us strike that balance.
Okay, like what?
So things like prayer, fasting, acts of charity,
Oh, okay.
all designed to help us shift our focus away from ego
Right.
and cultivate gratitude, humility, and connection.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like we're hitting the reset button on our priorities.
Yeah,
Instead of
yeah,
chasing external things, we're turning inward, focusing on that spiritual connection.
you got it.
But what about when we face, challenges or hardships?
Mhm.
How does this concept of NAFs play into our ability to cope with those tough moments?
That's a great question. And the teacher talks about how our nafs can make it even harder to cope with these challenges. When things don't go our way,
Mm-hmm.
our ego wants to lash out,
Right.
complain, or just wallow in despair.
It's that voice that says, what me? This isn't fair. I deserve better.
Yeah, that resistance to what is
Right.
and surrendering to a higher power.
So if we're not supposed to give in to those negative impulses, what's the alternative?
Well, the teacher emphasizes that these challenges, while painful, they're actually opportunities for spiritual growth. They're tests that allow us to strengthen our faith,
Okay.
develop resilience, deepen our understanding.
So instead of seeing hardship as a punishment or like a sign we messed up,
Right.
it's more about reframing it as a chance to, learn and grow.
Exactly. And it's about asking ourselves,
Yeah.
what can I learn from this? How can I use this challenge to become stronger, more compassionate, more faithful?
Right. It's like that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah,
But it must take a lot of faith to view those difficult experiences that way.
it does. But the teacher really emphasizes that this is when submission to Allah's will becomes most important.
Okay.
Remembering that Allah is with us through every trial. He has a plan for us even when we can't see it.
Okay.
It's about finding solace and strength in that connection.
I'm starting to see how this ties together. It's not about, blindly following rules or just accepting whatever happens.
Right.
It's about cultivating this deep personal relationship with Allah,
Yeah,
trusting in his wisdom, his mercy, and making choices that align with his will.
exactly.
But how do we know what his will is? Are
Right.
there any, signs or guidance that we should be looking for?
That's where seeking knowledge comes in.
Okay.
Reflecting on our actions,
Mhm.
the teacher encourages us to study the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad
Mm.
to observe the world around us
Okay.
and pay attention to the subtle ways in which Allah guides us.
So being proactive in our faith, actively seeking understanding,
Yeah.
Paying attention to those little signs.
Right. It's not about waiting for a grand revelation.
Yeah.
It's about being present and engaged.
Okay. And the teacher also emphasizes prayer and supplication,
Mm-hmm.
right? Communicating with Allah, asking for guidance, seeking his help.
Exactly. It's like having that direct line
Yeah.
to tap into that source of strength.
It all sounds challenging, though.
It
Like,
is.
it's one thing to understand these concepts intellectually,
Right.
but how do we actually put them into practice day to day?
Well, that's where the rubber meets the road.
Okay.
And that's what we'll be exploring in the final segment.
Okay.
We're going to be looking at some specific examples of how this all plays out
Awesome.
in everyday situations and how we can use these teachings to find more peace, purpose, and fulfillment in our own lives.